Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of Flutter Explained. One of the last videos was the future builder, and here we use the future to receive a network request and show something like on the right side, a list of users in that case. So today we want to do the same thing by getting some data from an API with the HTTP package, but this time we will not take a closer look how we create the view. We will take a closer look how we can create a network request to get the data. Without further ado, let's get started. All right, so I want to begin the journey to get the network requests on pub.dev because in pub.dev we have the possibility to download the HTTP package. And the HTTP package is necessary to get a future-based library to making HTTP requests. If you don't know what an HTTP request is, it is the way how servers and clients communicate on the internet. And for that, you can read a lot about that stuff. So if you don't have a clue what HTTP requests are, maybe you should check out that video on another time. But we want to use that HTTP to get some data from an URL. So that package provides that for us, and we can read how it is used. And we have to install it as a dependency again in our library. And the second thing that I want to show you is the random user generator. And a random user generator is created from the random API people. And as you can see, it delivers us like a lorem ipsum for users or people. So we get a picture, we get a phone number, we get even the address or birth dates and everything. And you can see there is a documentation for that API. So how we can get different things. So this is the answer that we get from the API whenever we call the API. And as you can see, there's also an URL that we can use to request multiple users. So if I enter that in my browser window and press enter, you can see we get a list of results as a JSON object. So we receive a JSON, and in that JSON, we have multiple elements inside. And each element represents one person that we can use for our library now. So we want to get these information, decode the JSON, and receive the data as a Dart object in the end. So let's get into code. Voila. So I'm back with a new haircut and also a bit more brighter shirt. So I'm ready for you guys. And as you can see, we are back into Android Studio and we have started with the dark mode. And also what you can see is we have already a home screen, and I already prepared some stuff with a future builder and a list tile builder, list view builder, all crazy stuff that will display our list later as soon as we have the data. But because we want today focus only on the network service, I would just suggest taking a look into our lib folder. We have created a model here, which is a person.dart, which is, as you can see, empty. We have a home screen, that is our screen that shows our data later. Then we have a service, which will fetch our data today. And the main.dart is only difference is that I turned on the dark mode. That is something that I will maybe explain in another video. All right, so first let's start with the model. We want to get data from the internet, and for that we have to create a person model at the end. So whenever we fetch that information, we want to create a person for every element that we find inside of our JSON. So we need, of course, a person inside of Dart. So I create that person for now. We want to have a class person. And this person should contain a name, the phone number, and an image that we can show. So, all right, so give it, the name is, of course, a string, right? String name. And with that, I mean the full name. I can change that to full name. Yep. So, and then we want to have the phone numbers, it's also a string. And the last thing that we want is the string of the image URL. or what we, yeah, let's keep it image URL. And I think I will keep that also name because my template is working with that the easiest. So, and now something new happens. So what is a JSON? A JSON is a very long string with a key value pair. And in JSON, it's always a key that is a string and something else. It could be a Boolean, it could be a number, it could be a string as well. So we have somehow to transform this string that is a map between a key, a string, and something else into this person. So how we can do that is in the easiest way, we create a new constructor for it. So in the usual way, we would create a normal constructor like so, this.name, this.phone number, and this.image URL. And this would create us a person whenever we call it. But there is also something else that Flutter provides us, and this is called fromJson. And fromJson is, fromJson itself is a constructor from person, even though we can't see it inside. So there is nothing, but fromJson creates us a constructor that returns something. So we want to have a map here inside, and this map is a string to dynamic pair. And this is a JSON object, right? Because we have the key that is a string and a dynamic that is anything like Boolean, string, or number. And this fromJson should return us now a new person object. And with this colon here, I can create immediately the new object out of this JSON. So I can say the name parameter of this new person object will be fromJson. And now we have a specifica. If you look into the API, so if we take a look into our API, we see we get the results. And after that, we get the different objects, which all of these objects represents one person of us, right? So we look into the first object, and now we check, okay, we get the name object, which is represented by three other attributes: title, first, and last. And all these together gives Mrs. Brandy Walker. Okay, so what we have to do now is we have to say, because we get for every object that we have as a JSON, we get the name and the title, and the name and first and name and last. So let's do that together. So back in our code, now we have to say our name consists not only as name, then we have here the title, and that could be it already, right? So now we have already the title, but of course the name consists of more than just the title. So I will create a new string out of it, and I'm a bit up first, and last is Command V, up, Command V, and last, voila. So with that, we have already created a new person object, but we only set the name of that person object. So of course, we want to have also the other properties. So we make a comma behind of it. And after the comma, we write now the next thing that we want to set, the phone number, which is also have to be a string, right? Because it's a phone number. We don't know how it is created. And we know, because if we look into the API, we see that it is inside of our object of person, it is an immediate ascendant. So it is phone directly without any name or anything. And last but not least, the image URL. And here we have again, it is inside of picture. And inside of picture, whoops, what I'm doing, we have another object called thumbnail. Cool. So if I save it and reorganize everything a bit, it looks pretty good. So that means we create now from a JSON immediately one of these person objects. Great. So next step. The next step is to get the data actually. So for that, we want to create a new class called Person Network Service. And this person network service should return us always all the information that we want. And for that, we will create a function. So I call that fetch persons. And voila. So for now, I want to be a bit lazy and I don't return anything yet. And or at least I don't tell Dart that I will return anything. If there is nothing, it will be always void. This is not true, so I leave it out for now. And also there is no parameter at the moment. But because I know now that I want in the future to have something there, we want to take one step after another. So first, we want to specify the URL. And I could do that here in a class as an attribute, but I know this URL part will never change as long as the application lives. And because it will never change, I create a constant string that I call random person URL equals a string. And this string has to be the URL part. So if we go back to the README user me, we can see this part will never change for all the API calls that we do. So back to our Android Studio, we take that part. And now we want the first time to call the HTTP. And if we take here a look, I don't have the HTTP package yet. And that call says me that I have to import that. And as we already know, the dependencies are very handy in that. So let's go to pub.dev and get the HTTP package. And we have it here. And now installing, getting the dependency, going back to our Android Studio and add that. And of course, package.get. Wow. Okay, so now we have the dependency. We can check that against in the Dart packages if we want. We can see it here. It's installed now. Perfect. Exactly what we want. And now we want to make this HTTP call. So for that, we say HTTP, right? Oh, what happens? Why I can't import it? That is a very good question. So for that, we have to import something. And I have to manually write something in Android Studio like import. Normally, that never happens. And if I enter here HTTP, we can see it is actually there. Why could Android Studio not identify it? So if I import that for now, and I just jump into the code, here it looks a bit different than usual. As you can see, there is no class surrounding all of these functions and all of these informations. And because there is no class surrounding them, Android Studio has trouble to identify this object. So for us that we understand this comes from the HTTP package, we give it a name. We give this specific import a name, and so we can use everything inside it if we add the HTTP in front of it. Of course, it would work also if I just leave that out and now would write something like get. Then you can see on the here in that part that we import that from the HTTP package actually. But the problem is if I just write there the get and write the URL, then it is very hard to identify that this one comes actually from the HTTP package. So I always recommend you to add this HTTP whenever there is no class surrounding the inners of an import. Cool. So we give it a name and say http.get, and now we actually call this get function. That is amazing because now we get really an attribute. But now something else happens. This HTTP get actually is a future. But we don't want to have the future, we want to have the response inside of it. And that's a very good thing. So what we want to have is the response, and sorry, I have of course to say http.response. Response equals this. Of course, we have to give that variable a name. But as you can see, somehow it doesn't work. And that is the problem with the futures. We have now to wait till the future is completed. We already talked about the futures in another session, I hope. And now we have to add an async modifier. And if I do that, you can see immediately up there, there's the asynchronous. And now we can use that response. Now we get not back a future of a response. We get now back the response itself. And that is great because now I can access all these parameters that was not before there. So for example, the status code. And as everyone knows, the status code 200 is our favorite one because it is okay. Everything works well. And else, if we don't get this 200, we throw an error. an exception in that case. And I give it a message like something gone wrong. And I add the response.statuscode just to see whenever this error comes, something went wrong, and I get the status code. The benefit of that is I will use a future builder, and with that, the future builder will understand it as has error and will display an error case in that field. Whew. Let's take a short break. Let's take a step back. What did we do? We created a person, we created an instance of a person with the constructor from JSON, and now we created a person network service. We depended on the HTTP package, and we used the HTTP package to create ourselves a future with a response. And now we check against the status code, which is 200 or 400 or anything else. And if it is 200, we want to do something with this response. And now we are talking always about this JSON, that long string. Where do we get that from? Well, the response itself has something called body. And in the body, there is a very long string now as called JSON. The problem with that is this JSON is nothing for Dart. It doesn't understand it. It's just a string. So there is a package called jsonDecode from the Dart convert package. And as you can see, I just write jsonDecode. And now I can import the library Dart convert. We import the Dart convert and have now the jsonDecode in that place. And this one returns us a map of people data. So, and that is amazing. So what we have here is all that string is now that JSON. And what we want to have from that is people data. We want to have the results. Because inside of here, we have a list of dynamic. Because we don't know what is inside this list. And this is now the peoples. So inside of that list, we have now inside of that list, if we go back to our result, we have now all of these objects inside. So 0, 1, 2, 3, all of these people. And what we want to have is a person's object. And luckily, we created already that nice little from JSON constructor for us. So what we want to do is we want to go over each JSON and give it into that person object and return a list to our whoever gets the information. So first we want to map the JSON that we got from the response body, and we want to map that. And map, you can understand, like we have one object on the one side, and now we want to have a second object, something else on the other side. And we want to transform it from that part to the other one. I maybe make another video if you like, so just write it in the comments. But for us, we get a JSON in that case. I could be more specific, but this is enough for today. And what I want to create is people dot, sorry, not people. We want to have person dot from JSON. Where it is? Of course, person. We have to import it and then dot from JSON, and we enter the JSON. So, and if I say now return, we will see everything is fine, but I can make it even a bit better by saying to list. And with that, we collect everything that we have inside the list, and this list we return back. So can you tell me now what happens here? I still didn't have any return parameter for this function, and I am not really a fan of that because we have a type network. I also want to be very specific with the types that we return, that every developer understands which type fetch persons returns. All right, let's see. First, we have async. So that means we return a future of something. That is something for sure. As soon as we have here async, we return something as a future. Now we return, it seems, we collect everything inside of a list. So we return a list of something. And now we map everything to a person. So it seems that we return a list of persons. So we wait a while, and somewhere in the future, we promise from that fetch person, we promise that we return a list of person. Cool. That's that. So we managed it to do that. We return a list of persons. And now, if we are lucky enough, we can try to also specify the amount of people, which I didn't do here. So I say this fetch person gets an integer of the amount that we want to fetch from the service. So as you see here, I do it already with that parameter. Everything after a question mark is a so-called parameter in the URL. You can read more about that. It's also a very interesting topic. And now we make http.get, and now we add this stuff behind the URL, right? We make it a bit different. Sorry for that. Voila. And we say that one we add. And instead of 10, we use the amount. And with that, we have now our functioning person network service. And if we go back to the home screen, as I said already, I prepared a little thing, right? So what we can see here is I create, let's change that and just re-implement that thing. And as you can see, what the home screen does right now, it takes the person network service, which I import yet, and creates one for us. And it needs to be final because we are in a stateless widget, right? And now we fetch persons, and it finds this method, which returns inside of a future builder because it returns a future, if you remember. And we fetch 10 persons. And if we take a look here, we have a list of persons. And now we check if we have data, we show a row, and all of that kind. So if I activate the iPhone again, it also bring it in the front. So, and we reload with the state, then we should see, with a bit of luck, a list of 10 people. Isn't it great? And I can also scroll in it because it is a list view. And also what I can do, I can improve that to a 100. And as you can see, immediately it fetches the new data and displays them. Cool. All right. Thank you so much. You've made a very good job if you've come this far today. So you learned how to use the futures, how you create your own network service that catches the data from an API. You created your own constructor from JSON, which is very important and very handy, that shorthand to know. And then after that, you also created persons out of it and send it all that stuff back as a future. Whew, very well. So as you can see, on the right side, you find the idea. If you are interested in a little challenge, I would be proud if you take that thing as it is inside of my GitHub repository and make it much more beautiful. Add a scaffold, bring some colors inside, maybe also bring your own API information out of it. Just take the persons that you have there with all the information and enhance this list with phone numbers, email addresses, age, whatever you like. Just try that out. Because with that training, you can ask me questions underneath of the video and I can answer them, which would be helpful for both of us, I think. Cool. All right, so thank you very much for joining me today on this adventure. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below or on Twitter. I'm very happy to answer them. And for everything else, thank you for watching. On the right side, there is the very big abo button, right? And on top of me, you will find the 2 videos that are interesting for you. And thank you for watching and see you guys later.